let me turn to Michael O'Hanlon. He's a senior fellow and director of research in foreign policy at Brookings Institution. Michael, there's obviously two issues going on, and I want to begin with the humanitarian issue. Somalia, you already know this, was hit by a horrific famine back in 2011. Over 200,000 people were killed. The UN says back then the international community did not respond quick enough. So my question to you is the international community going to respond quick enough this time to avert another disaster?
Greetings, and it's a terrible tragedy, and I'm afraid that the answer to your question is probably no, but it reflects a broader problem. The outgoing director of the World Food Program, just last week, I believe, mentioned that there were now some 300 million people worldwide at acute risk of malnutrition or starvation, a higher number than had been the case several years before when he started his job. And so as a group of nations, we are not doing enough to provide enough food for developing countries that are on the brink of drought or other kind of calamity. And as a rule, I think we just have to beef up our capacity across the board rather than hope that we can do hand-wringing at the last minute based on a Secretary General's visit. Certainly his visit is appropriate and his call to action is wise, but the broader problem is structural, and countries like China, as well as the United States and others, are not doing enough yet to provide enough food aid for the world.
Well, let me focus on the reaction we're seeing here in the U.S. In the Western world, really. It seems like Somalia is far away. How do we explain to Americans, to Westerners, why what's happening in Somalia actually matters, why it's important?
Well, I think the only real appeal you can make starts with a humanitarian appeal. You can try to talk about the terrorist threat, and you mentioned that in your coverage, and it's real and it's there, and it's part of a broader transnational Salafist network. So certainly to the extent that drought and starvation could be something that al-Shabaab tries to benefit from, then there is a security concern. But I'm not sure that argument really is compelling. I think it's a little too indirect. And the more compelling argument is to point out that our fellow human beings are in need of help. And we as an international community just haven't done enough, even though we could. And certainly COVID plus the war in Ukraine together have made for a more urgent financial picture for a lot of countries around the world. And that's contributed and reinforced and exacerbated these kinds of famine challenges, not only in Somalia, but elsewhere. So I think you have
Michael, I apologize for interrupting you because we're running out of time. I really want to get to this al-Shabaab problem. Has the government there made any strides in trying to end this bloody insurgency?
Well, people have tried for a long time. You asked, how do you get Americans interested? 30 years ago, the outgoing President Bush sent a humanitarian relief effort to Somalia. And the next year, we had the terrible Black Hawk Down episode where 18 Americans lost their lives because militias started to get involved in the whole operation. Al-Shabaab's been there for a long time, and it's not going away anytime soon, I'm afraid. The Africa Union peace operation has not been strong enough or robust enough to really help the government develop its own capacity. Yes, I do think we could try a much more vigorous and well-resourced effort to beef up the Somali government's own capacity over time to go after al-Shabaab. But it's already been a 30-year effort, and unfortunately, it hasn't progressed very far.
All right. I wish we had more time to talk to you. Thank you, Michael O'Hanlon. An important discussion.